I'm just a regular guy, you know? Work a steady job driving trucks, come home to a cold beer, and crash on the couch with the game on. Me and Sarah, we've been married 8 years. Built a life together, a house, a dog, the whole deal. She wasn't perfect, but neither was I. We argued about money sometimes, or how I'd leave my boots by the door, but it was normal stuff. I thought we were solid. I thought she was mine, and I was hers. That's what marriage is, right? Loyalty, honor, family. It was a Friday night, late October, when things went sideways. I'd just gotten back from a long haul, 2 days on the road, hauling freight upstate. I texted her when I hit the highway, said I'd be home by 10. She replied quick, something like, "Miss you, drive safe." Normal. Nothing off about it. I figured she'd be waiting up, maybe with some leftovers or just sprawled out on the couch watching one of her shows. That's how it usually went. But when I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. No lights, no flicker from the TV. Even the dog, Rusty, didn't bark. Usually he's losing his mind the second my truck rumbles up. I grabbed my bag, walked in, and flicked the switch. Nothing. Dead quiet. Rusty was just lying there by the kitchen, looking up at me with those big eyes like he was confused too. Her car wasn't in the garage either. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts. Just that "miss you" from earlier. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. My gut started twisting. You know that feeling when something's wrong but you can't put your finger on it? I ain't the type to sit around wondering. I'm a man of action. So I grabbed my keys, hopped back in the truck, and started driving around town. She didn't have a ton of spots she'd go, maybe her sister's place, or that coffee shop she liked. But it was late, past midnight now, and nothing made sense. I hit up her sister first. Knocked on the door, probably louder than I meant to. Just answered, half asleep, squinting at me like I was nuts. "Sarah? No, she's not here. Said she was staying home tonight." That twist in my gut turned into a knot. I didn't wait for Jess to ask questions, just got back in the truck and kept looking. By 2 a.m., I was steaming. No word, no sign of her. I pulled into the bar on Main Street, last place I could think of. Her car wasn't there, but I went in anyway. Asked the bartender if he'd seen her blonde, about 5'6", probably wearing that denim jacket she loved. He shook his head. I was running out of ideas, and the anger was building. Where was she? Why wasn't she answering? I didn't want to think the worst, but it was creeping in, loud and ugly. I drove home, figuring maybe she'd slipped in while I was out. Full dot, and there it was, our car, right in the driveway like it had never left. My heart slammed against my chest. I stormed inside, boots stomping loud enough to wake the dead. And there she was, standing in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water like nothing happened. Hair messy, jacket off, giggling to herself like she was in on some private joke. "Where you been?" I barked, voice rougher than I meant it to be. She jumped a little, turned around, and grinned, like it was all a game. "Oh, hey, you're home early. I just went out with some friends, lost track of time." Her words were loose, sloppy, like she'd had a few drinks. I stepped closer, staring her down. "Friends? Huh? Why didn't you answer your phone?" She waved it off, still laughing. "Battery died. It's no big deal, babe. Relax." But I wasn't relaxing. Something was off. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and that laugh, it wasn't right. It was too loud, too fake. I didn't buy it. Not for a second. Then she turned to grab something from the counter, and that's when I sighed. A mark on her neck. Not a scratch, not a bruise, but a red spot, like someone's mouth had been there. My blood went hot. I didn't sake, I acted. Grabbed my phone, flipped on the camera, and snapped a picture right then and there. "What's that?" I said, pulling it up so she could see. Her face froze. The laughing stopped. She reached up, touched her neck, and for the first time that night, she looked at me straight on. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice cracked. I wasn't letting it go. "Nothing? You come home at 2 a.m., laughing like an idiot, was that on your neck, and it's nothing?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. Don't lie to me, Sarah. I'm not stupid. And that's when she doubled down, smirking like she could talk her way out of it. You're overreacting. It was just a dumb night out. Harmless. Chill out. Harmless. That word hit me like a punch. I didn't say anything else, just turned and walked upstairs, phone still in my hand, picture burning a hole in my pocket. I wasn't done with this. Not by a long shot. She thought she could play me? She had no idea what was coming. I stormed upstairs that night, my head pounding with every step. Her voice trailed after me, calling out, "You're making this bigger than it is." But I didn't turn back. I wasn't in the mood for her excuses. That mark on her neck, her sloppy grin, it was all screaming something I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. I slammed the bedroom door shut, locked it, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that picture on my phone. The evidence was right there, blurry but real. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Something happened, and she was lying to my face. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept replaying it, her stumbling in, that laugh, the way she brushed me off. By morning, I was running on fumes and fury. I heard her moving around downstairs, clanging dishes like everything was fine. It wasn't fine. I wasn't gonna sit there and pretend. I grabbed my phone, pulled on my boots, and marched down to face her. She was at the stove, frying eggs, humming some tune like it was any other Saturday. Rusty was at her feet, wagging his tail. It made my stomach turn, acting like nothing happened while I was tearing myself up. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice low but hard. She didn't even flinch, just glanced over her shoulder. "About what? Last night?" "I told you, it was nothing." I held up the phone, zoomed in on that mark. "This ain't nothing, Sarah. Stop playing me." Her shoulders stiffened, but she kept flipping the eggs, like she could ignore me out of it. "You're ridiculous," she said, voice sharper now. "It's a rash or something. You're blowing this up for no reason." "A rash?" Did she think I was born yesterday? I stepped closer, towering over her. "You don't come home at 2 a.m. with a rash from friends. Where were you? Where you was?" She turned off the stove, finally facing me, but that smirk was back, like she still had the upper hand. "I was out with the girls from work. We hit a bar, had some drinks." "Betsy, you're acting like I committed a crime. Then why's your story keep changing?" I shot back. "Last night it was lost track of time. No, it's girls from work." "Which is it?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. She was scrambling. "You're twisting my words," she said, crossing her arms. "I was tired last night, okay? I didn't explain it perfect. Sue me." I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. "Fine. Let's call them. Right now. Eat your phone, call these girls, and we'll see." Her face tightened, and she hesitated, just long enough to tell me everything. "I'm not doing that," she snapped. "This is stupid. I don't have to prove anything to you." That's when I knew. A man knows when he's being fed garbage. I didn't yell, didn't lose it. I just nodded, real slow. "All right. If you won't, I will." I turned and grabbed my keys off the counter. She followed me, voice rising. "Where are you going? What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I was done talking. I drove straight to the bar she'd mentioned, one of the few spots in town that stayed open late. It was early, but the weekend bartender was there, setting up. I walked in, showed him the picture. "You see her last night? Blonde, denim jacket, probably with some girls." He squinted at it, then nodded. "Yeah, she was here. Came in around 10, I think. Left with some guy." So, naughty groped. "Some guy." My chest locked up, but I kept it together. "What did you look like?" I asked, voice steady even though I was boiling inside. "Tall, dark hair, leather jacket." Didn't catch a name. I thanked him and walked out, my hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat in the truck for a minute, letting it sink in. She didn't just lie, she went out, met some dude, and came home acting like I was the fool. I wasn't gonna wait around for more stories. I drove to her work next, small office, real estate stuff. One of her coworkers, Jen, was there, early for some open house. I caught her in the parking lot. Hey, was Sarah out with you last night? Jen looked confused, then shook her head. No, she said she was staying home. Why? That was it. The last piece. I didn't say thanks, just got back in the truck and peeled out. My head was a mess, anger, heart, all of it crashing together. I wasn't losing what was mine without a fight, but this wasn't about begging her to stay. This was about truth, honor. I had to know the whole story, and I wasn't stopping till I did. When I got home, Sarah was on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing was wrong. I walked in, stood over her, and said, I talked to the bartender. Said you left with some guy. Jen says you weren't with her either. You got one chance to tell me what's really going on. Her head snapped up, and for the first time, I saw a crack in that smug mask. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't wait for her to find the words. I pulled out my phone again, hit record, and pointed it at her. Say it. Right now. What happened last night? She stared at the camera, then at me, and that's when the laughing started again, nervous, shaky, like she couldn't stop. Okay, fine, she said, voice trembling. It was just one night. A stupid, harmless thing. You're making it worse than it is. Harmless. There was that word again. I stopped recording, my hands tied around the phone. Dill. I growled. She looked away, muttering, just some guy from the bar. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? 8 years, a home, a life, and it didn't mean anything? I turned and walked out before I did something I'd regret. I wasn't done, though. Not even close. She thought this was over? She was dead wrong. I hit the road in my truck. No plan. Just driving. The anger was a fire in my chest, burning hotter every second. 8 years of my life, building something real, and she tossed it for some random guy in a bar? I wasn't the type to cry about it. No, that's not me. I was mad, pure and simple. Mad at her, mad at myself for not seeing it sooner. A man's supposed to protect what's his, keep his family strong, and I'd let this happen right under my nose. I ended up at the lake, this spot a few miles out of town where I used to fish. Parked the truck, killed the engine, and just sat there, staring at the water. My phone buzzed, her name on the screen. I didn't pick up. She texted too. Can we talk? I'm sorry. Sorry? That word didn't mean a thing after what she'd done. I turned the phone off and chucked it on the seat. I needed space, needed to think straight. Hours passed, sun went down, sky turned black. I kept replaying her words. Just some guy. Didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, why do it? Why lie? Why come home laughing like I was the punchline? My hands gripped the steering wheel till my knuckles went white. I wasn't gonna let her twist this around, make me the bad guy for being pissed. This was on her. When I finally rolled back home, it was late, past midnight. Her car was still there, lights on inside. I walked in, and she was pacing the living room, eyes red like she'd been crying. Good, I saw it. Let her feel something. She started talking the second I stepped through the door. Muck, I messed up, okay? It was dumb, a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. I cut her off. Voice called. You didn't mean to? You went out, met some guy, and what, tricked into his bed? Save it, Sarah. She flinched, but I didn't care. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording from earlier, and played it back. Her voice filled the room, shaky, laughing, admitting it. Do that? That's you, saying it was harmless. You think I'm gonna swallow that? She stared at the floor, hands twisting together. I was drunk. It just happened. I swear it's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I stepped closer, looming over her. You don't get to decide what's a big deal to me. You broke us. You broke everything. My voice cracked at the end, and I hated it. Hated showing that weakness. But it was true. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was my life cracking apart. She reached for my arm, but I pulled back. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to touch me like nothing's changed. Her face crumpled, but I wasn't moved. I turned and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, Started throwing clothes and shirts, jeans, whatever I can grab. What are you doing? She asked, voice small. Leaving, I said, not looking at her. I can't be here with you right now. She followed me to the bedroom, talking fast. You don't have to go. We can fix this. It was one time, I swear. I zipped the bag shut and faced her. One time's enough. You think I'm gonna sit here, wondering if it'll happen again? I'm not that guy. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, Rusty trotting after me. You're not taking him, she said, stepping in front of me. That set me off. He's my dog too, I growled. And I'm not leaving him with you. She backed off, and I scooped him up, carried him to the truck. She stood in the doorway, watching, but I didn't look back. Pulled out of the driveway and didn't stop till I hit a cheap motel on the edge of town. Checked in, dropped my bag, and let Rusty curl up on the bed. I sat there, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of it all. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was lost. Everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted, gone in one night. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I wasn't crawling back. A man's got his limits, and she'd crossed mine. Next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls from her. Didn't call back. Instead, I drove to the hardware store, bought a new lock for the house. I wasn't letting her think she could just waltz in and out of my life whenever she felt like it. Got back home around noon. She wasn't there. Car gone. Good. I changed the lock, tested it, and felt a little piece of control come back. This was my place too. She didn't get to call the shots anymore. Then I saw it, her wedding ring, sitting on the kitchen counter. Just lying there, like she'd left it behind on purpose. My stomach dropped. Was she done? Was this her way of saying it? I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. 8 years, and now it was just a piece of metal. I shoved it in my pocket, not sure what to do with it, but I wasn't throwing it out. Not yet. That's when my phone buzzed again, not her this time, but her sister, Jess. Hey, Sarah's in my place. She's a mess. What's going on? I didn't over an explanation, but I kept it short. She cheated. I'm done. Jess went quiet, then said, she told me it was nothing serious. Said you're overreacting. Overreacting. There it was again. I hung up without another word. I wasn't overreacting. I was waking up. She thought she could laugh this off, cry a little, and I'd come running back. Nah. She didn't know me at all. But something was still nagging at me. What was she hiding? Why'd she leave that ring? I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling this wasn't the end of her surprises. And I wasn't wrong. I spent that day at the house, trying to keep busy. Took Rusty for a walk, fixed the leaky faucet. Anything to keep my hands moving and my head from spinning. But that ring stayed in my pocket, heavy as a brick. Every time I brushed against it, I'd feel that burn in my chest again. She'd left it there to mess with me, I was sure of it. A man doesn't just let that go, he wants answers, and I was done waiting for her to come clean. Around dusk, I heard a car pull up. Looked out the window, her sister Jess's sedan. Sarah climbed out, head down, moving slow like she was dragging herself. I didn't unlock the door. She knocked, soft at first, then harder. Please, just let me in, she called for the wood. We need to talk. I stood there, debating, but I wasn't hiding from this. I turned the new lock, opened the door, and stared her down. You got 5 minutes, I said, arms crossed. She stepped inside, looking rough, a hair tangled, eyes puffy. Rusty wagged his tail, but I snapped my fingers, and he stayed by me. She glanced at him, then at me, and started talking. I didn't want it to go this far, she said, voice low. I messed up bad. I know that. But you leaving, changing the locks, it's too much. Can't we just figure this out? Figure it out? I shot back, stepping closer. You figured it out when you hooked up with some guy and lied about it. You don't get to cry now and act like I'm the problem. She flinched, but she didn't back off. It wasn't planned, she said. I was out, drinking, and he was there. It just happened. I didn't think it'd blow up like this. I laughed, harsh and short. You didn't think? That's your excuse? 8 years, Sarah, and you didn't think about me? She looked away, chewing her lip. I still love you, she muttered. It was a mistake. One night. That's all. I wasn't buying the tears or the soft voice. I'd heard enough lies. Who was he? I demanded. And don't give me some guy. I want a name. She froze, eyes darting to the floor. It doesn't matter, she said, too quick. That's when I knew there was more. I pulled out my phone, flipped on the camera again. Say it. Right here, right now. Who was he? She shook her head, backing up. Stop recording me. This isn't a game. But I didn't stop. You don't get to hide this. Tell me, or I'm done talking. Her hands went to her face, and she let out this shaky breath. Fine. It was Matt. Some work. Matt. I knew the name, some slick real estate guy she'd mentioned a few times. Tall, cocky, always grinning in those dumb office photos she'd shown me. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. Matt, I repeated, voice low. Go long. It was just that night, she insisted, stepping toward me. I swear. He was at the bar. We talked, had too much to drink, and it happened. That's it. I didn't move, just stared at her, the phone still rolling. You expect me to believe that? One night, out of nowhere, with a guy you work with every day. She nodded, desperate. Yes. I'm telling you the truth now. Truce. That word sounded hollow coming from her. I stopped recording, shoved the phone in my pocket. Get out, I said, pointing at the door. I don't want you here. She started to argue, but I cut her off. Dell. Now. She grabbed her bag, tears streaming, and left. I locked the door behind her, double-checked it, and stood there, breathing hard. Matt. It wasn't just some random guy. It was someone she knew, someone she saw all the time. That made it worse. I wasn't sleeping that night. I was too wired, too mad. I grabbed a beer, sat on the couch, and started thinking. She'd come back laughing that first night, acting like it was a joke. Now she was crying, begging. Something didn't add up. Next morning, I called my buddy Dave. He's a mechanic, but he's got a nose for trouble. Told him everything, kept it short. Man, that's rough, he said. You sure it was just one night? I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I don't know, I admit it. She's saying that, but it stinks. Dave grunted. Check her phone if you can. People slip up, leave stuff behind. She left her old phone charger here. Maybe she left more. I tore through the house, not caring about the mess. In the bedroom, under a pile of laundry, I sounded an old burner phone, cheap, not her usual one. Powered it on, and there was text to M. Stuff like, Friday was fun, and can't wait to see you again. Dates going back weeks, not just that one night. My hand shook as I scrolled. She'd lied again. This wasn't a mistake, it was a habit. I stopped pictures of every message, every date, my blood pounding in my ears. Weeks. She'd been playing me for weeks. I wasn't just hurt now. I was ready to tear something apart. But I kept it together, saved the evidence. This wasn't over. She thought she could laugh and cry her way out of this. She didn't know what was coming. That afternoon, she showed up again, banging on the door. I let her in, phone in hand. Ready? You want to talk? I said, voice steady. Let's talk about this. I held up the burner phone, watched her face. She went still, eyes wide, and that's when it hit her, what she'd left behind, what I've found. She didn't say a word, just stared, and I knew I had her. She stood there in the doorway, frozen, staring at that cheap little phone in my hand. The color drained from her face, and for once, she didn't have a quick excuse or a fake laugh to throw at me. I held it up higher, stepping closer. What's this, Sarah? Friday was fun. Can't wait to see you again? You gonna tell me this is harmless too? My voice was steady, but inside, I was a volcano, hot, ready to blow, but keeping it locked down. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean for you to find that, she stammered. I barked a laugh, sharp and bitter. Yeah, I bet you didn't. How long, Sarah? How many nights? Don't lie to me again. She sank onto the couch, hands in her lap, looking small for the first time since this started. A few weeks, she whispered. It wasn't serious. Just stupid. Stupid. That word hit me like a brick. 8 years of marriage, and she threw it away for something stupid. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, the screen still glowing with those texts. Weeks, I repeated, pacing the row. You've been sneaking around, texting this guy, meeting him, and you come home laughing like I'm some chump. You think I'm gonna sit here and take that? I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, voice breaking. It started as nothing, a dumb crush. Then it just kept going. I was gonna end it. I stopped pacing, turned to face her. You didn't end it. You got caught. That's the only reason you're here crying now. She shook her head, tears spilling, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen the evidence. Weeks of lies, weeks of her choosing him over me. A man's got pride, and she'd stomped all over mine. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the pictures I'd taken of those texts, and held them up. Look at this. Look at what you did. You don't get to play the victim here. She glanced at the screen, then away, like it burned her to see it. I'm sorry, she said, barely audible. I'll stop. I'll never talk to him again. We can fix this. Fix this? I stared at her, disbelief flushing over me. You think there's a we left? You think I'm gonna trust you after this? I stepped back, putting distance between us. I built this life with you, house, dog, everything. And you tore it apart for some guy in a leather jacket. You don't fix that. She stood up, reaching for me, but I sidestepped her. Don't, I growled. You lost that, right? Her hands dropped, and she just stood there, looking lost. What now? She asked, voice small. I didn't hesitate. You're out. Pack your stuff and go. I'm done. Her eyes widened, like she hadn't expected it to go this far. You're taking me out? This is my house, Till. I shook my head, hard. Not anymore. You made your choice. I'm keeping what's mine, Rusty, the house, my life. You can have your stupid fling. Go live with Matt. See how that works out. She started to argue, but I cut her off. I've got the pictures, the recordings, everything. You want to fight this? Go ahead. But I'm not backing down. That shut her up. She knew I wasn't bluffing, a hand to prove, and I wasn't afraid to use it. She grabbed her bag, movements jerky, and headed upstairs. I stayed put, listening as drawers slammed and hangers clattered. Rusty whined at my feet, and I scratched his ears, keeping my eyes on the door. 20 minutes later, she came down with a suitcase, her face a mess of tears and mascara. I'll be at Jess's, she said, like I cared. If you change your mind, I didn't let her finish. I won't. Get out. She lingered for a second, then walked to her car. I locked the door behind her, turned the deadbolt, and stood there, feeling the silence settle in. That night, I sat on the couch with a beer, Rusty sprawled next to me. The house felt empty, but it was mine again. No more lies, no more wondering. I pulled her ring out of my pocket, looked at it one last time, and tossed it in a drawer. Didn't need it haunting me. Next day, I called a lawyer buddy of mine, Tom, guy I'd known since high school. Told him everything, sent him the pictures and recordings. You've got a solid case, he said. She won't have much to stand on if you push for the house and the dog. That's what I wanted, keep what I'd earned, what I'd sought for. She could have her freedom, but not my life. Weeks later, I heard through Jess that Sarah had moved in with Matt. Didn't surprise me. Didn't hurt either, not anymore. The anger was still there, but it was colder now, sharper. I sold the house eventually, didn't want the memories, and got a place closer to work, just me and Rusty. Started over, kept it simple. A man doesn't need much, just loyalty and a clear road ahead. Looking back, that night she came home laughing was the end of it all, but it was also the start. I lost a wife, but I found my spine. She thought she could play me, thought I'd ring over. She was wrong. And when she saw that phone, when her face went pale, she knew it too. That was the moment she realized what she'd lost, not just me, but the life she'd thrown away. Guess it wasn't so harmless, after all.